from. We're in northeast part of San Antonio, just so you know kind of where we're coming from. And what I want to talk to you about today is in particular um, this question: what are the only two reasons teens rebel? What are those? And in my experience, there are only two, and there's a reason for it. I'm going to try to share with you the exact nature of that reason as we think about it. So let's think about teens and why they rebel. I have a video on this that I put out a while back, and this video strangely has strange to me, has over 100,000 views. So when I say there are only two reasons for teens to rebel, I mean something in particular. And I'm looking at the higher level picture. So a lot of times people comment through there and they'll go, no, I rebel for this and this and this. And every time it's all the same. It's, hey, that's the that backs up what I'm saying. So let's think about this just for a sec. Teens, two reasons. So first of all, you need to know that a couple things. When your kid hits teenage years, it's kind of your second chance at parenting, because you're going to find out what's gone on, not necessarily what you did wrong or right, but when they get older, cerebral cortex, they're bigger, they make decisions, they can run off, they can do stuff. And so it's really exposing things in a fresh way. It reminds me of our son's cerebral palsy. We didn't know it for 22 months because the nature of the signals coming out to the muscles when they're little and their muscles are flaccid, a subtle CP you can't see easily unless you know what you're looking for. And what happens is when the muscles get intense, it becomes more obvious, his spasticity on that right side of his body. Well, it's very similar. It just comes out in a bigger way what's going on in your kids. And so if you understand that, it's your second chance. You have more time, and you can't control the outcomes, but you can certainly influence things. As I like to say, if they don't learn it at home, God's going to send them on a field trip. And those don't tend to be as good. So we'll see how that goes. So the two reasons are this. First of all, understand human motivation is basically, in your teen, is they're motivated toward the future. So they want a future and they want to feel good in their future. They want a better future, want things to be good or better. So they're trying to feel good. So when a teen rebels, fights against you, they're engaged in a strategy to feel good about the future. And the future works like this for them. There are two reasons they would be motivated. The first is that they want out. That's what it normally looks like. They want out. They actually want to escape the family system. And we see this historically in people that marry young and run away from home. I mean, on the extremes. Marry young, really young, run away from home, maybe engage in illicit activities, or maybe just get hyper involved outside of the home, just isn't ever there. So they're wanting to get out. The other reason a teen will rebel is that they want to get in. And what they're aiming for is to be included. And so their rebellion is a strategy to be noticed and to be pulled in. So on one side, that last one, they're kind of rejecting you or the family system. And on the other one, on the first one, when they want to get out, they're rejecting you or the family system. When they want to get in, they're the one that feels rejected and they want to be accepted. In many ways, that's kind of all there is to it. But let's think a little more deeply about it. And as we think about it, I don't know what you're facing. Your kids may be young. That's great. But this is really where the game is, and what tends to produce it when you understand systems. So The reason things happen around you is there a combination of forces in play, and a lot of it from a systems viewpoint has to do, especially with that relationship with mom and dad. So everything's kind of reacting to it. And it's not just that you're reacting because you came down through a system. So your parents interacted a certain way and you reacted, their parents interacted, your grandparents, and you reacted. So that's sort of the game. And what's going on is basically when we set up a system that is too controlling, that is forcing too much pressure and control on exact behavior on a child, they tend to want to rebel. When so that's let me just say that's the first part. So in parenting, as you move along, parenting a child at 9 years old is different than 16. And sometimes we're really good parents for 9-year-olds, but we apply the same stuff at 16. It does not work because they're moving towards adulthood. They're moving to a place of especially their own decisions and their own consequences. And so when you begin to understand that and appreciate it, it can start changing things because you want to shift to give them more responsibility, give them more freedom. And that includes they need to make mistakes, I don't know if that's a statement, but it's the way it works. And in making mistakes, that's kind of a learning process. That's sort of how it goes. So what you want to do is in your home, allow them more freedom, but with some safety, as it were. And that turns out to be real strategic because it kind of moves you to a coaching role, a trusted advisor. And the trick to giving advice to anybody is, this week I was thinking about this and I thought, advice is like, it's hard to advise because you're going, if it was me, I would, but you're not them. So it gets tricky. But it's like not having an invitation to a dance. If you don't have an invitation, you can't go. You can dress up. And that's a lot of times what we do. We can dress up. We figure out a solution. We know what we want to tell them. But we hadn't been invited to the dance. And so you can dress up and go to the dance and get rejected. So one of the things you want to do when you start talking to older kids and even younger is do it by invitation. I've been thinking about something. If it'd be okay, I'd like to share it with you. And if they say yes, you're golden. If they say no, you're not. Say, okay, they'll probably come back and ask again, or you can ask again later. But if they're not interested in hearing what you have to say, they're not going to hear it. It's just going to be an argument. So that's one specific piece. Do an invitation, get more coaching, quit over oppressing the system if it's over oppressed. But the other side, the rebelling to get in is trickier, and this is not uncommon at all. And rebelling to get in comes largely from a simple problem. And that is that you have a favorite child normally, and it's not them. And so that sense of favoring one child over others creates an imbalance in the system. What you want to do is favor, ideally, your spouse, if you're married, over the kids, because that creates safety and balance. So if mom and dad are okay, we're okay, that kind of thing. It is really important to love all your kids the same, in my understanding. This happens with friendship too. We told our kids, you can't have a best friend. I mean, they can when they get out and they do what they want, but you can have several best friends, but not one. Best friends tend to create conflict and favoritism, and it creates the same game with other people. So subtly, they want to in, but they'll reject you, diss you. If you're not that close and they want to be, they'll dish you, you can't fire me, I quit. Or they're dissing you to get you to come back and say, oh, I'm sorry, come in. So embracing all your kids is part of the trick that you want to, even on the level of what you demonstrate, like hug them in groups. Don't hug them always one at a time, sometimes several. Figure out how to spend individual time with each of the kids. I used to like to take the kids to coffee and we'd sit down, or, Starbucks or whatever, get them some, cold and sweet. And we'd sit there and I'd tell them, I said, there's no agenda here. What that means is I don't have anything I want to talk about, and I'll talk about anything you want to or not. We'll just sit here. It didn't matter. I just wanted to hang out with you. That is how you include people. That's the game. And when I say game, I don't mean in a bad way. I mean, that's how it works, right? So teens rebel, sort of your second chance. They either want to get in or want to get out. They want to get out. They feel something oppressive. You're not letting them pursue things they care about. They're so many rules, so much control. They're freaking, or they want in. They don't feel like they belong. They don't feel like they're included. They'll a lot of times say they're the black sheep. And I don't know if that's about, you're special because you're not that, And there may be a bent in teens to rebel, but we didn't see that. We saw very little rebellion because we focused on us, church. We'd sit by each other, Jody and I, and the kids around us. We didn't corral them. We made us centered. At the dinner table, we sat next to each other, not across the table. That's a setup for a battle. Camper's tip, going to a meeting, and it's a round table. Just whoever you sit across from is probably going to work out to be your adversary. So those are some things to think about. You want to just look at your system that as they grow, you want to give them more freedom, more respect for them to be individuals. That's how you grow independent children. That's how you grow happy adults. That's, the essential game plan. So Q&A, whatever you want to talk about, homeschooling, family, life, whatever, we'll see if we can't figure out something better. That's what this is for. Jody will be here in a little bit. And we just want your questions. So if you join us on YouTube, I think there are instructions there, maybe not. See if I can find the option for, here's the invite. Nope, that's for people. I'll find it in a moment. But definitely on YouTube, we can chat. Let's see, I know folks are here. I have hands up, and I think that's all good. I always run into this weird problem that I can't quite see where, like, my chat doesn't show up unless I do something. Well, share clips. Why does this do this? I'm going to have to do a study on this game and just try to figure out what in the world is going on. I'm going to go in this other direction. I'll stop it. I didn't mean to. So what kind of questions are you facing? I know we're heading to Thanksgiving, sometimes in the States. So sometimes that's its own little challenge, because sometimes family gets together and mom usually says, can't we just get along for one day? Something like that. And I always think that's quite fun, because I don't know what it is. You always have some argumentative uncle or somebody there. Maybe not. But for the most part, you take it in stride and quit demanding how things should be, and just enjoy the game. Let's see if I can open this up here and see some kind of chat. It's so strange. If you don't give me questions, it's hard for us to do this channel. Here we go. Maybe. I've got to figure this out. I apologize. So Jody will be here in a moment. And here we go. Hallelujah. Okay. Good morning, San Diego. Awesome. I've had nice fish tacos there. Recently found your channel. Thanks for these videos. They're helpful. Oh, I'm so glad to hear. So Tell me what's on your mind. What kind of questions you've got. I can throw out some that I commonly hear, but I would way rather know about your questions. Okay, so how can we encourage kids to work more independently? I feel like I have to sit right next to the kids and can't do anything else. It's stuff they know. I think that's a pretty common question that we tend to face. That developing an independent child works like this: when you do something for someone else that they can do themselves, you make them into a cripple. You cripple them. You make them dependent. So here would be an example of how I did it. In me personally with the kids in math. So the kids come to me with math, and they would say, "Daddy, I don't understand this," and I would say, "Okay, where is it in the book? Where's it explain it?" They'd show me. I said, "Well, read that to me aloud." So they would, and they'd read it. And usually, commonly, they go, "Oh," and then they go off. They figured it out. Now, if they didn't, I would say, well, work the problem, but do it out loud. Tell me out loud every step you're doing so I can know what they're doing. And as they would work it out loud, I would listen to them, and they would usually go, "Oh." And then if not, if they really needed some help, I'd work on giving them hints. I wouldn't tell them the answer. I'd say, I think you've made a mistake here. I'd show them a mistake in the steps, something like that. But we also, since they start at 7:30 and they get through at noon 30, our kids didn't like to waste time. And what they found, because if they didn't get through their math, they'd have to finish it in the afternoon. And our kids all discovered it's like, oh my gosh, it's easier for me to figure this out than to ask him, because I don't have time to teach this old man math. I need to learn it myself. And I think that's what it is. We don't let them struggle and figure it out. All education, really, when it works, is always about two things. One, it's about curiosity. Two, it's about frustration. That's how it goes. So it's most fundamentally quit giving them the answers. And I'd say up front, you want to tell them, we want you to be independent. We want you to figure it out. There's a great little book by Maria Orleo or something called Everything's Figure Outable. And that's the trick. You want them to figure out. And even if you have to show them and teach them something, that's great. But have them work on it first. Have them come up with their best answer, best explanation. When you fill in and just tell them, it's not developing independence, it's developing dependence. So a lot of this is about you playing dumb, not being that helpful, asking questions. You don't do it for them. And that's a temptation, because we all want to go, oh, let me just do it. But honestly, if you want them to learn to sew something or repair something, whatever, you have to let them do it. You can't swim for them. You can explain swimming, but they just have to get in the pool and fool with it. Hopefully they have instructors and practice, but learning is an immersive type thing. And so if you watch yourself, you're very likely doing for them things they can do themselves, at least parts of it. And so I'd say most fundamentally, that's the real trick, as it were. Does that help? Does it make sense? So another question, I hope. So another question, we can return it. Says, any recommendations for a 10-year-old adventurous and impulsive boy? Oh, after my own heart, who isn't always able to predict possible outcomes. Yeah. Okay. Who is able to predict possible outcomes? That's a skill. And so he's in the process of learning the skill. But I get your point. Like, if you don't know the consequences of your choices, that's actually called wisdom when you can do it and foolishness when you can't. So I'm trying not to helicopter, but at the same time, try to keep something like interest. There's a little heart there in the way. I'm sorry. Trying to keep them alive. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so you want to keep them alive. You want them to experiment, but they have to learn. So honestly, I think one of the easiest things you can genuinely do with an impulsive child is start trying to help them think through what's going to happen in advance. Get them to start playing out scenarios, and you can practice with these. You know, you can just say, I give you one of mine. So let's see. We used to like to climb on the roof of somebody's house and jump off of it. Now, sometimes we jump to this smaller house or whatever. I can't even remember. I think it was Elaine's house or somebody. I don't remember doing it for mine. And certain parts of the roof are higher. But it's like, let's just think through. If you climb a roof and jump off at the second story, at the high part, what do you think would happen? And they'll say, well, I'd hurt. Yeah. And then maybe they'll say, I'd probably break a leg or an arm. And if not, you can give them a hint. You can say, you probably break a leg or an arm. But don't stop there. Keep working on it. And then what would happen? And then we'd have to take you to the doctor. And then what would happen? The doctor might have to give you a shot to relieve the pain and then reset it. And then what would happen? And let them think about it. And if they don't come up with an answer, you can give them a chance. The arm, I'd have to be in a cast. Yeah. And when you're in a cast, what would happen? How long would that be? And you talk 6 weeks or so. So a month and a half. And when you're in a cast, what are the kind of things that happen from there? What can't you do? Can't play ball, can't do this, can't do that. And then it itches bad, etc. So all I'm saying is actually helping them run scenarios. It's kind of like what we do. That's the point. You want to model and train them and think of it as a skill to learn for this guy. Because his impulsiveness and experimental, that's great. It's called experimenting. And you run an experiment, but you don't want to blow up the lab. And in running the experiment, you want to learn from it. So did that work or not? So that's the other side of how to go. And that is to debrief it with them. So when your child does something impulsive, you give me a good example, a real example, it's even better. But you go over it and you say, what happened? I broke the lamp. Okay. I broke the lamp. And then you have to get them to admit it. You know, the lamp fell. No, the lamp, it was in the wrong place. No. You broke the lamp. I got to get there. And then once they say that, you want to ask them, so how'd you do that? How did that happen? Like if I wanted to do the steps you did and break a lamp, what would I do? Well, you would tag your sister and you would run behind the couch. And then you wouldn't look where you're going and you'd hit the wire, the plug, and it would fall down. Okay, good. And it'd fall down and it'd break. Right. So that's how you did it. All right. So let's come up with a better plan the next time you go through. So again, the scenario, but it's for that moment. And what would that be? Tag my sister. Oh, I know what. We should play tag in areas where there aren't breakable things. Right. So what would that be? The main part of the living room, the hallway. Maybe it's an outside thing. I don't know. Maybe, that's it. But you let them wrestle with coming up with a plan. Doesn't mean you don't give them a plan. And then I would add some follow-up. Say, look, would you tell me the next time you play tag and don't break anything? If I'm making up a story. And get them to do that maybe a couple of times. And what happens is that whole complete loop of learning happens. Been there, done that. I've experienced it now. I understand the cause and effect of the game. And when they start understanding, since they're interested in feeling good in the future, how did it feel to break the lamp? Not so good. So that's what we're aiming for. Why do making these good choices lead you to feeling good? And why does making bad choices lead you feeling bad? Being impulsive is just a thing, but you can still learn to think it through. We, with our kids, learned that their friends would want to do something wrong. So, hey, let's go do something stupid. And my friend, my boys especially, they would say, "Guys, you know better than that." And bar none, every time, may not work every time, it did for them. Their friends would go, "Yeah, that's true," and they come up with something else. It's really quite fun and curious, etc. Yeah, so hope that's helpful. But it's a similar type game, because gang, what you want to think about is educating your child. You want to educate them really with skills, reading, writing, math, and we're adding one here, wisdom, about the consequence of life choices. When you make a choice, it goes in this direction. If you make this kind of choice, it goes in this direction. This kind of choice, it goes in that direction. And a lot of times they just haven't thought through it. And that's what we can do. Even when we look at other people, we can learn from their mistakes. This is where Proverbs says, "I went by the vineyard of a man lacking sense," or lazy, I forget. "And it's broken down. The walls are this. The plants aren't cared for." And he concludes, "A little labor, a little rest, a little folding of the hands to sleep," something like that. "And your poverty will come on you like a thief." It comes like that. So it's really learning to invite them to think through the consequences. And that works on math, that works in reading, predictively. What do you know so far? How do you think it's going to turn out? Getting them to think about how a story might end, like we do, watching a mystery or something, or reading a novel. That's all that training to try to predict based on experience and wisdom. That's the game. Absolutely. So what else? What else is on your mind? What do you wrestle with? Here comes Jody. Let's sit her in here.
Morning.
How was your morning?
Oh, it was so fun. A grandkid called and asked me to read him books.
Yeah. And he doesn't do that very often. It's kind of a new one.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's 3.
Uh-huh.
He's just getting old enough to tolerate.
We're not around him enough for me to understand him exactly. And I thought he said he swallowed a bug, and he was actually asking me if I would read him a book.
Yeah. So that happens. I think that's how you married me. I don't think I was asking you to marry me, but it just worked out that way. I said, "Are you married?" And you said, "Yes."
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So I've talked about teens, 2 reasons they rebel. We've talked about teaching kids cause and effect, impetuous and problems of them not getting their work done, all this independent stuff. A lot of this is like we would do, run that play till you get it right. And by the way, that's another one. Like, I don't know, putting their towels up in the bathroom. We might literally throw it on the floor, have them go in and put it up. And I go, "That's pretty good. Let's try it again." I throw it on the floor. Let's run through again. And we do it 3 or 4 times. And it's like they understand the sequence now. They understand how the game goes.
Yeah, it sounds a little silly, but it really is much. The leverage it gives you is really worth the time of throwing the towel down several times and saying, "Okay, let's do that again." And it's not even that they did it wrong the first time. You're just practicing. You can tell them, "We're going to practice. We're going to practice making our bed. We're going to practice hanging up our towels. We're going to whatever."
Exactly.
It is.
There you go. So what other questions are on your mind?
Oh.
Do you have any questions? Let me ask you this. What would you tell the younger you? What are one of the things you'd go back and say, I wish?
Yeah, there are several things. One, I've said this to y'all before, I wish I had taken better notes of what I did and didn't do, what worked and didn't. In general, just talking to everybody now, I don't think I ever thought I would be, say, "Well, where's that chart you kept?" or something. I'm like, "Oh, well, I wasn't planning on continuing this." So I would have kept that, but that's not what other people are doing.
You'd also kept some of the fun things they did, written them down and recorded them, because those slip away, you remember?
Yeah. Oh, things, funny things your kids say and all. you think you're going to remember them. And I know life's busy and all, but now I tell all my girls, to do, you have so many ways to record it now via your phone or whatever. Write those down. You will not remember enough, especially if you're me. Fred has a better memory, but kids
Oh
love
yeah,
to,
I can remember things that didn't even happen. That's how
the
good
kids
mine is.
love to hear those little things. And I'll go, I don't know which one of y'all did this. And that's not, they love to know they said this funny thing or did this funny thing. So I did not do a good job of that. I wish I had done that. A little
Cool.
thing, but I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah. So He Forever says, I'm glad I found your channel. Thank you for this. I'll be homeschooling in my, sorry, I have the wrong glasses on. I'm glad I found your channel. Thank you for this. I'll be homeschooling my 8-year-old in January. We live in Canada. Any recommended resources for curriculum or tools, resources to start with? Well, sure. I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do. And I don't, and you need to check the laws and what you're facing. I don't know quite what the game is in Canada. I know we have a lot of Canadian homeschoolers, and I have a fair number of Canadian friends, but you need to know what the game is and it's required. We use something called the Robinson curriculum, largely because when we found it, and I studied it, I found out that Art agreed with me by like 85%. So, if somebody agrees with me, they got to be right. And I was pretty young, but what we were looking for, I was probably more prone to just unschool, throw them books, throw them whatever. And Jody, with her master's in education, needed a scope and sequence of some type. And so this became an approach that we could understand around these skills, reading, writing, and math. And that approach, then we could adapt inside of it. So I wrote a writing course to go with it because it didn't have much about writing. It was like, have the kids write every day. So certainly all of our material, I recommend it. The 11 courses or stuff on parenting and memory and relationships and communication and how to run your emotions, which is I think one of the better things I've done. When people really go through it, they understand how to chill their kids out or how to motivate their kids. So that's a big deal. But in particular, what you're going to want to do is find a good phonics program, because that's kind of the key. Or I don't even know, a good program is great. I think we used Alpha Phonics. They have a lot of things out there. We used the phonics game or something like that too, as a review part of the process. But in phonics, they're just, you're teaching them the code, and that's what you want to do, of how these words and symbols work, so they can decipher and then learn to read. Because then once you read, guess what? You can do math. You can write. You have a lot of things come along. You got dexterity, but for the most part, the orientation is really about helping your child do better next week than they did this week, better tomorrow. It's not so much competing with the system as taking your child where they are and helping them grow. And all the curriculum, all of the curricula out there are fine depending on what they're doing. I think the more they do it all for the kids, the worse it is. If they don't have built-in review, like we use Saxon Math, and in the version we use had good review process. You're learning new things, but going back and reviewing old, and maybe most of them do that nowadays. But what you're going to want to do is ask around, and check. It depends on your goals, objectives, and the laws there. But those are places I would definitely start. And a lot of it, you get to figure out. I mean, honestly, a lot of homeschooling is an experiment. An experiment works like this. You say, we're going to try this, and we're going to set a date in the calendar, and then we're going to review it and learn. And so you do an experiment, and if it works, it works. If pieces of it, you learn something good. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Try something new. You've got time. And so anyway, that's where I'd start. You got any curriculum thought?
Well, I think they said 8-year-olds, so that They might have already been schooled some, I don't know, but whatever. The main thing about homeschooling that I would say is whatever curriculum you use, for a while we were using, lots of our friends use pieces and parts of different ones. They like this one's history and they like that one's math and that kind of thing. Mainly
like a makeup kit,
Yeah.
some Mary Kay, something,
No.
some expensive.
Mainly, I'd say, look, you're focusing on the basics. You're focusing on most of your time is spent on reading, writing, and arithmetic. And most of the other things, history, science, all that can kind of be built into your reading program. It just are things that they can pick up later. I just would not spend much time on those, especially at the young age. You're trying to get them real solid in their reading, writing, and arithmetic. And you don't try to replicate the school system. If your child's been in school and you've got, okay, we got to do everything. We got to do math and history and science and literature and this and that. And then you cannot do that. You will lose your mind. So
yeah. And it gets back to your goal is skill development, because once they can read well, it opens up the whole world to them. Once they can do math well, they start understanding problem solving and math. So it's skill. Knowledge is fine, but it's skill, because you can have the knowledge, but it's skill. I don't know if I've been clear on that. It's skill.
But if you can find some, there's lots of good curriculum out there. There's faith-based curriculum. But I wouldn't get some curriculum where you thought you had to where it overwhelms you.
Yeah, she adds, she's a strong reader. Our goal would be to strengthen her character, math skills, etc. And your answers are so helpful. So awesome. Yeah, so strengthening her math skills is going to, where is she? And then nail down that. Don't rush ahead. Like if she doesn't get, I didn't get fractions when I was in the 5th grade, or no, long division. And what's the difference? So long division, or what we call it then. And so I got caught the next year, and I got tutored with Miss Standards in the afternoons until I could do it and understand it. That's really important. Sometimes you just want to do a math lesson over. If they don't quite get it, let's just do it over. Do it over a 3rd day, and really like master it. And when in math, when you master one thing, one insight of what it means, that is a foundation for you to master the next thing and the next thing. So it's this iterative process. So you keep circling through, but it's progressive. And that's what you're trying to get to grow that skill. Because look, and let me throw this in. This is really kind of important. The way it works is learning. Here's when your child's learned something, or when you've learned something. It's when the speed of access is like that. That's what you want them to do. So if you learn somebody's name, you're not looking, oh, his name's Bob. What was it? He has a big nose, look like an apple, bobbing for apples. Oh yeah, Bob. That's not what we're talking about. That's fine, use mnemonics. But at some point you just need to know that's Bob, that's Sue, that's Mary, So it's the speed of access when you really learned a name. Same with anything else. It could be vocabulary, it could be skills, whatever. Can they quickly access it? Math facts are like that. Math facts need to be learned. 3 times 7 is 21. They just need to know it. They don't need to count. They don't need to wonder whatever. They just need speed of access. And that's going to make the math way easier. In fact, I'd say that up front for you with her math skills. Some of her math skill problems very well could be, I don't know, I don't live there, not knowing the math facts. So you get a good foundation of math facts, up through 9s,
12s.
Well,
Usually,
no, here I agree. Here's what they normally say: 12. I'm telling you, if you get up through 9,
because we have the 10s,
they're going to do great. I'm going
Right.
to tell you. So you can do up to 12. That's great. But I'm just saying, most of what they'd ever use is covered up through 9 times 9, so to speak. So there you go. Uh-oh.
Yep.
Where did we go? Let's see. Thank you. Got it. Cool. So, other questions? This is your chance. I'm going to look through our list of questions too. I could only teach one thing to my children, what would it be? That's such an interesting question. Let's see what that does. Oh, someone says we're such a blessing.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. So let me throw this question in here just for grins. If I could only teach one thing to my children, what would it be?
You probably have an answer to that.
Well, here's what I actually have. I have a way to think about it. And the way to think about it lets me look for an answer. So here's what I look for. I look for leverage. So like, what one thing, if you do this, is probably going to take care of a multitude of things. Like if I was trying to teach my kids to survive in the wilderness, I wouldn't start with how to make a hammock out of a willow tree. I would start with
two things. I don't know which to do first, but what would you do?
Mine's one of yours. What's the other one? And what you're looking for is like
they have to get food.
One thing that really takes you a long way.
They'd have to get food, but I'm also thinking fire is important.
Yeah, fire's going to be it because you got warmth. It protects you from animals. You can cook unedible things, that have worms in them. Sorry, it's survival. Yeah, so that learning how to build a fire is a leverage thing. So when we think of education, what is it that if they learn this thing, it really opens up everything else, right?
I think reading.
Yeah, I think reading. Look, it's either going to be reading or it's going to be a character issue, like discipline or something like that. That maybe a philosophy that says they learn. I don't know, but I can learn. That's our family mantra. I don't know, but I can learn. So it's a learner mindset. Even that is slightly more leveraged because it could apply to mechanical stuff or anything. Sure. So teaching that, but that's usually in parallel from a educational skill point. It's the reading. And by reading, what we don't mean is the ability to say all the words out loud in the order they go. It's actually to understand what they're saying. That's why in our reading course, we teach you, set up some exercises for you to really help your kids understand the three elements of what goes into reading. You got to learn phonics, you got to learn to read. But what's going on is there are different like elements in there. So there's a person, another person, they're on a hill, there's one tree near them, there's a bag of coins. So those elements, and then you want to start understanding, well, what's the relationship? These two people are enemies. The coins are the point of contention. Let's say they're up on the hill because this the hill of reconciliation for this village. That's where you have to go to settle these things. And so you understand those elements, and then you look at how they go through time, because that's teaching your child logic even before they can know logic. Like what happened before between these two to get them to the hill, to get them to the spot. They walked up from both sides. The coin bag, let's say, was in the middle. Somebody planted there, and they understand the steps in it. All those pieces are what go into comprehension. So they got to understand. So to say reading comprehension is somewhat redundant, but you have to do it because you can literally read words without understanding what you're reading. So that skill then opens up the ability to do math problems, especially word problems. It opens up writing, obviously, which is connected to communication. It allows you to tap into the minds of the world in history and all that have had great, insightful thoughts. It gives you a skill to teach yourself more vocabulary as you read. You kind of learn, figure out words from context. It comes in handy when you're a grandmom because you can read to those kids. They enjoy it. That leads into understanding stories. It leads into lessons. There's a thing called the Deluder of Satan Act back in Massachusetts forever ago in the colonial days. And the rule was you had to learn to read by 6 because they thought if you could read your Bible, Satan is deluded. There's a counter for the kids. So that's too long of an answer, but
see if somebody has a question, then I'll add to something. And
we'll add to something.
Okay. Well, I'm just thinking too, kind of with what I would have done more of, and we've talked about it before, is actually, I was just so in the moment and so in the day with the kids, and just like, okay, we did school, check off, we got things accomplished. But I think I would spend more time myself and with Fred, just where do we want them to get to? What are we doing here? What's our goals? What's our aspirations? And Fred says this much better than I do, but just taking time. I don't care if you don't do school for a week, but you're spending time trying to figure out what are we doing and why are we doing it? And where do we want to get to?
If we simplified it, it'd be like this. What concerning your kids' education when they are leaving home would make you feel good? Like, start there. And you start thinking, well, hopefully they can read and do math and write. They've got good character. They understand how to do practical things in life, bank account.
So it's the character,
car,
the practical, it's education.
And then knowing that is an end result, you get to start thinking, well, what's it going to take for them to learn that? How do you get them there? If you want your kid in the South, one of the things Southerners all can do. What are you laughing at?
I just know what you're going to say. Keep going.
Barbecue. In the South, I literally knew no one of my friends or anybody we were around that couldn't swim, because like in Alabama, there are 3,000 miles of rivers. I'm not even counting the lakes and all. There are pools, etc. And so in the culture, it's like you got to get your kids to swim. And in the South, it's warmer, so there's a lot more of the year that they can go drown themselves. So if you think about it that way, you want them to swim. What does that mean? It means they know how to hold their breath. They know how to tread water, or maybe drown proof. They know how to swim underwater. They know how to swim on top of water. It's at least that stuff so they can get themselves to the shore. And so with that in mind, you start figuring out a plan about what you want to teach them, where to find a class for it, a curriculum, swimming curriculum, something like that. And having that end in mind lets you start figuring out the plan. And the easiest way to do it is just work backwards. I want them to graduate knowing calculus. Really? What comes for that? Pre-calculus, for that. And even inside of those, just algebra 1, there are certain principles they need to know, and they're going to come in order. And the curriculum usually orders it for them, but you want to make sure they've really mastered it, speed of access type thing.
And something we did that not very many people did that I would still totally recommend to families is we schooled all year round. So they were still, because we started at 7:30 in the morning and we were usually through around noon. If your kid's not doing it, what else are your kids doing in the summer? They still have plenty of time to play with their friends. And
their friends aren't getting up till 10 anyway.
Well, yes, we didn't sleep in. We didn't have,
right.
And so they kept on course, or if they got behind in something in a math, they had plenty of time to get, if we had to spend more time in algebra 1 than normal, whatever, it's too bad. We can still, it just was such a good way to do things. They weren't forgetting things.
They weren't forgetting over the summer the math they learned in the spring. Most books you have to spend a quarter of the year reviewing the last year. It doesn't mean did they go to like youth camps? Yeah.
Yes.
Did you have breaks? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. But we had all those things.
Yes.
But the overall disposition is actually that we're that education is something that goes on all the time, not modeling, well, you can stop, you can take breaks, because we want them to get out as adults and go, this is what you do. You keep learning, you keep educating yourself. You have that I don't know, but I can learn firmly in your brain. And so you're busy, whether it's work, whether it's for a new job, whether it's for hobbies, new aspirations, how to communicate, relationships, how to parent. It's everything. All of it's a learning thing, because it's largely what humans do. We have some instincts, some impulses, but Mozart still had to learn the scale. Sorry, you're a genius. You have to still learn the scale. It's the it's the way that game goes. Let's see. Inquiring mind. I love how God works. I do too. It's so fascinating, especially when I predicted that he's not working. And then he works it out, and it's like, oh, wax on, wax off. I get it now. I love how God works. This was so timely. Last night, I had an emotionally charged discussion with my son, who's 16 next month. He's such a good young man. Navigating this independence is not easy. Yeah, it's not. Largely because you have two people who have their own views, and then we get into and then we're sure we're right, and then we're trying to convince the other one that, look, in a communication, here's what goes on. I wasn't there for a 16-year-old, but I know what goes on. And what goes on is he and or you are sitting there going in this heated thing, because what you're thinking is, if he understood me, he'd agree. And he's thinking, if she understood me, she'd agree. And so then you keep battling to get him to understand. The problem is, you can actually understand and disagree. That's just because you understand it doesn't mean you have to agree. And if you work that way to go first understand, then disagree. So let me see if I understand what you're saying. You're saying, and you fill it in, and they go yes, or they go no, and they tweak it, and then you say it another time, and finally they go, that's it, you got it. And then you know exactly where you disagree, and it's probably a small portion of it, that it can be addressed. So the thing I disagree, the best people the best communicators basically say, look, here's what I need you to convince me of, for me to agree with you. So this is the point. But that only comes with good communication. Good communication separates agreement from understanding. And most of us go around thinking our view is right. We believe our view. We got it figured out. And so if they just understood what I was thinking, they'd agree with me. And I'm just telling you, it ain't so. That's not how it goes. So that's honestly, I perfectly, I think, understand things about Luciferian energy and demonic worship and spiritual warfare and demon possession. And there's so much stuff that I've had to study in my life about that stuff. I get a lot of it. Don't buy a lot of it, but I get it. And I sure don't buy that it's a good path. If you're on that path, shoot me an email. Let me chat with you about that. But just because you understand something doesn't mean you have to agree. And the more you can appreciate with people, the better you are. I'll also tell you this. I like to try to figure out why they're thinking that way. Like, what in the world is going on that you thought that's a good strategy or that's a good idea? What happened? Why is it that you're thinking this thing? Why does that make you feel good if it turns out, that way? So mostly communication is a learning proposition where you're trying to dig and really understand the other person before you, need to lay out your case. Because a lot of magic happens when people come to understanding. Half the time, it's vocabulary. We just mean something different. What are you laughing at?
We recently had a woman who's in her upper 70s that met this man, and they went to coffee, and we were asking her about it, but she said we hooked up, and we were in a small group together, and all of us laughed, and she goes, why are you laughing? We said, Well, the young people don't mean they went to coffee when they say they hooked up with somebody.
Yeah.
So just vocabulary.
It just could be a total incomplete, perfect misunderstanding. That's kind of the way it goes. All right. This was fun. I think we had some good discussion, good questions. I hope it was very helpful. If you enjoy this kind of stuff, if it's valuable to you, share it with somebody who also might enjoy it. And otherwise, our plan is to be there next week. Is Black Friday a good day to do questions?
Well,
I'll think about that. If you're not on our mailing list, go to independenthomeschool.com and sign up for the free videos, and then I'll update you. You can always unsubscribe, but
that way you'll know. I mean, we meet almost every Friday, but there's a few Fridays we don't. So you'll know ahead of time. You'll get an email.
Exactly.
And